And we will come to know this in the golden age. We'll rediscover who we were. You'll feel the love you held then. Your arms will open wide. We'll see a golden world again.
I am here today with Wendy Kennedy, who is a channeler and an energy intuitive and teacher. And Wendy is also a good friend of mine these last few years. So Wendy, hi.
Hi, Lee. Thanks for having me join you today.
Lovely to have you join us. So just to give those of you listening or watching a little bit of background, I first came across Wendy's work in, I think it was 2008, through the movie Tuning In, which is about spirit channelers in America. And it features 5 or 6 channelers. It's a great movie. I really enjoyed it. And Wendy, am I right in thinking it's on YouTube too, if people wanted to seek it out?
You know, it used to be, and I think now to watch the full movie, you have to go to tuninginmovie.com, but there are some excerpts and trailers on there that you can check out.
Okay.
But I think the full movie is only available online at the site.
Okay. So how I came to meet Wendy was about a year later. I was going through some things in my own life. I wanted some external guidance, and I tried a few different people for readings, and while they were all okay, none of them really resonated with me the way Wendy's reading did. And so I had a few readings with Wendy that year, and it was fantastic for me as a channeler at the time to be on the receiving end of channeled information from someone else at a time that I really needed it. So from there on, I think we met a year later at a conference and became friends. So that's how I came to know about you and your work. I'd be curious to hear how it all started for you.
Oh, goodness. It's been, I have to think back now. No, it's been almost 19 years since I started channeling, and 20 actually when I came across information about it. I started having visions, and I didn't know what those visions were, and they were pretty graphic, and they weren't the happiest of visions, but I wasn't scared by them. I was more curious, and so I started doing research about what I was seeing, thinking perhaps it was related to the building I was living in, or that it was somehow past life related, which it actually turned out to be. And I came across channeling in my research. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anybody who did it. I was in my mid-20s. I just knew it was something that I was supposed to be doing. And I have been doing a lot of work on myself. I have a degree in theater and film, and I grew up in Kansas. So having had that training allowed me to do a lot of things that I probably wouldn't have had exposure to otherwise. Things like yoga and qigong and movement classes, and really analyzing the self. And this is in the late 80s. So that helped prepare me, I think. And when the visions started happening, I started doing more work on myself. And it took me about a year from the time I came across it to the time I actually was able to get the information through. I was having really visceral responses, but I was trying to channel verbally and I couldn't get the words out. And one day I sat down and I knew I was supposed to have a pen and paper, and I started doing automatic writing. And it was a very unusual sensation, because if you've ever played with a Ouija board, you know what that feels like when something's moving and you think, well, I know I'm not doing it, but it must be somebody else. But it's just you and a pen, and it just flows. And I could write on and on and on. And if I were to do that by myself, my hand would start to cramp. But there was so much energy moving through. And I did the automatic writing for really the first several years, and I still do that today for myself. But after about a year, I found it very cumbersome, because I was already hearing what was being written well before it was able to get the writing out, so it felt very slow. And it was around that time that a group came to me, because when I first started channeling, I was working with my angelic guides and some other celestial beings. But when I started to channel verbally, that's when the Pleiadian Collective came, because they were waiting for me to channel verbally, because they work with tone and sound. And people always ask me, why do they sound different, or why do you have an accent? And It's not any one dialect. It's just tones and sounds that resonate with you at a cellular level that actually helps you to move energy. It's like you get a healing through the tones and the sounds and the words, but also, the mind is processing everything. So it's kind of like a double whammy that you get with them. And when I work with other beings, and I do work with a lot, I work with beings from other star systems and other celestial beings. And when they come through, the energy is very different, and it sounds more like my own voice. But the P's, as I affectionately call them, are waiting for me to start working with tone and sound.
It's interesting you say that, because one of the things that hit me with tuning in and interested me so much about you particularly was you had not so much even the distinct difference in accent, but energy. So in sections of that movie, you're channeling, and then you're also talking about your experiences just as yourself, and they do that with every channeler on the movie. But with you, I was most interested in, wow, that's the same woman who was just channeling, and I remember saying that to my partner at the time who I was watching it with, and so that was always an interesting piece to me. But one thing you just said, which hits me from my own journey, well, number one, we both had a similar background in that we did theatre, so that exposed us to all of these other things. But the thing that hits me is you talked about it started coming through faster, so the writing became redundant, and I started to hear channeled information when I was using a pendulum, and it would be the yes/no answer, and after a while I started to know which way it was going to swing before it started swinging. So it's almost like stepping stones can help us in, and we let go of those stepping stones as we go beyond, almost like having a handrail to get you to a certain point, and then you let go of the handrail and go beyond.
And I think that continues, because even now, almost 20 years later, I'm finding that I will go through periods where, like right now, the information is coming in such a broad bandwidth. That's the best way I can describe it. There's so much of it coming in at once, and trying to distill that down into just a singular thoughts, it can be a little challenging. And as that bandwidth grows, I have to adjust and find a way to translate it. And sometimes I'll find that they'll start a sentence and I won't be able to finish the sentence before we're off to a new concept or a new thought. It hasn't come out verbally, but I find that sometimes when people are just listening, they're getting the download so they don't miss it. But for me, when I go back and I listen to an audio recording, if I'm cleaning up an audio recording, I think, oh my gosh, how do people even follow this sometimes? Because it's so much information that's packed. And I think we do go through these stepping stones. We find our way to adjust and recognize frequency and then move on to the next stage. So we put down the pendulum, or we put down the pen and find a new way of working, and that we're just continuing to do that more and more.
I also find with what you're talking about, I've noticed when I've channeled for groups at seminars or live broadcasts, those half sentences come in, and then it's like you have a consciousness as the channeler that they somehow get diverted or taken off to the left. And it's all a bit amorphous when you're channeling it. You're not fully conscious in the way you are, I don't find, when you're just doing this. But there is a consciousness as to what's going on. There is some sense of it. And I asked about that once, and they kind of explained, they said, when you're in service to a group, you're in service to a group. And so you can only reach the ceiling and the basement points as appropriate to who you're channeling for. So it's interesting what you just said about it being a new thought coming in, or a new consciousness coming in that's half formed, because I've also been told that's sometimes to do with those on the receiving end, what's collectively allowed for that group as decreed by that group.
And that would make sense, because I think those who are ready for the information will hear it internally, and those that aren't ready just won't follow the sentence through to its completion.
Do you find as a channeler as well, in the same way that we talk about, letting go of the handrail of in your case, the writing, or in my case, the pendulum, one of the things that when you channel for yourself or for others, either same thing, is it starts to affect you in a very bodily way, intuitively. So you no longer, whereas at one point it might be that you're reaching up for this spirit information to kind of try and see what's the next height for me, and you have that relationship for a while or for as long as it lasts, there starts to come a point that the more you interact with that and the more you create a pathway that's regular to that, it starts to become part of your energy field anyway. So then in my experience, what it's done is it's filtered down into my body and helped me open more, helped me ground more, helped me learn how to be intuitive. Of course, you still have your moments where you're confused or you're going through a new thing, so you don't know. But generally, for me, the act of channeling has really enhanced that sensory connection in the body, from maybe for a while, way back in the years ago, kind of looking up at it and receiving the information down. Does that feel true to you? Or
I think so, most definitely. I can't even separate it anymore, and because we've been doing it for so long, it's where do I stop and where does something else begin? And I guess the answer is there is no stopping and starting point, since we're all one and all connected. It's just, where do I want to focus my energy? How do I want to perceive myself right now as an individuated consciousness or part of the collective? But most definitely, I think, especially because you and I both do private sessions, and at this point, we've both done thousands of them, that we've said things so many times over and over and over again that it is part of who we are. And those things that are theoretical, it doesn't feel separate anymore. It doesn't feel like an idea. We've embodied it in some ways. We're running that energy and those frequencies through the body. So I think so. I can't even separate myself from that anymore. That is part of who I am. And it just seems like such a normal thing to me. And it's always surprised me, because sometimes people will say, thank you, it must have been a great sacrifice for you to channel. And I think, no, it's probably the most natural thing that I've ever done. And it just seems normal to me. I always like to say it's the new normal. It's something that everybody does. Everybody has the ability to do. It's just whether you're conscious of doing it or not.
How do you find people who aren't necessarily in spirituality or know about channeling, how do you find they react when they ask what you do and you say, I'm a channeler?
Depends on what space I'm in, honestly.
Right,
How much of my own stuff is up. If I'm feeling really comfortable with it, then it's never an issue. If I am feeling like somehow I'm separate or I'm having trouble trying to fit in, then yeah, people look at me strangely. That's not really the case. I was very fortunate early on that I was pretty honest about what I did with people, whether they were employers or new friends. And it felt so normal to me that their response was usually extremely positive, and they would say things like, oh, I've always felt that, but I didn't feel comfortable talking about it. And now when people ask, if they don't know what it is, or it's something that's too far out for them, they'll just have a very pleasant look on their face and say, oh. And I can always tell, because if there's not a follow-up question or some sort of comment, it just kind of goes right on over and on into something else, which I'm sure you know.
Yeah. I was just curious what your experience was. Yeah. So how do you experience keeping balance if you've run a lot of channeled energy? Because this is something that can come up for a lot of people, both whether they're channeling or awakening. Awakening is a pretty strong journey, as we know. So there is a balance point, and the Z's have talked about this. The Z's have said, you're exposing yourself to a lot of transmissions, and that takes time to filter through the body. Have you had times in your life where you feel like you've channeled too much and it's affected your personal balance, or does it not really work like that for you?
I think for me, balance is really the hardest thing, and something that I still work to find, because the center point is also ever changing. So as soon as I think I've found it, I'm growing or moving, and so I have to find a new point of balance. But definitely, there have been times where I have channeled to my limit. Let's put it that way. I never say it's too much, because we only take on as much as we're capable of dealing with, but it's having an awareness of what my physical body is ready for, because all that energy gets run through. And the times that I have, and there are 2 or 3 times that I can think of in particular where I was channeling a lot for either writing a book or working with private clients. And at that point, my body just can't take it. It's like I have too much energy. And even if I were to run or work out, it's still my body couldn't process it. I felt wired and exhausted at the same time. And I recognized that, oh, I've gone too far with that. I need to take more time for me and allow my body time to adjust, because while the ego part of me may want to access more information, the physical part of me needs time to catch up. And there is a limitation to that. So yeah, it's been a challenge. And I think for empaths, and I'm highly empathic. I think that's something that we've always struggled with for most of our lives. How do I feel like I'm in my body and grounded, or it's way too much, I want out. And so finding that balance is really important. And it's an ongoing process.
I think it is for everyone. I think whether you're a channeler, especially in these times with everything changing so fast, and I think that is, we're constantly evolving, therefore the balance point's going to be constantly evolving. So, but I do think that that's slightly annoying to to a lot of people who maybe in 2007 thought they had it down.
Yeah. Even 2012, especially true. The beginning of this year with 2013, because things really shifted and there was a lot of energy available, which meant there was still a lot of change. So I think even for the first part of this year, people who felt, all right, I know where I'm at, I know where I'm headed, really have had a hard time, because that center point has really been adjusted. It's like, wait a minute, and then you'll catch up and that'll move again.
I think part of it as well was a lot of people in the last 5 to 10 years, without meaning it to sound cliched, refound themselves, in a way they never had in their lives. So they finally found a way of their sensitive side coming back out from hiding through childhood or early adulthood or past experiences, found their voice more, found the way of being more in the world with their energy. So I think there was a jubilation and a liberation that can come through that. And then if you then seemingly regress, i.e. you lose that, and then you go into another state of now you have to see how you get your center while you're standing on a wobble board. I think that's kind of where the ego has to learn that it's not monitoring everything anyway. It's going to keep evolving and keep changing. I think that's where some of the disappointment comes in from some people in their mind, in their thoughts about, oh, I had it and I lost it. And in my experience, it's that you get it, you learn something new to get it at the next level all the time.
Right. And I hear a lot of people say, aren't I done yet? Aren't I done?
Oh, yeah.
Aren't I done?
Yeah.
I've been working so hard and for so long. Aren't I done? When am I going to get there? And it's not about a destination. It really is about the journey and, adjusting and seeing what each vibrational experience is like with the experience that you have to support it, the new filters, the new way of perception that you have.
And you just mentioned a few minutes ago you were doing a book, and I know that the book involves you and Tom Kenyon, who's a fantastic sound healer, and there's the third person also in the book.
With Martine Vallée, and she's in Quebec, and it's with Ariane Publishing, which is a French publisher, so the book will actually be out in French first, and if you're in Canada, that will be out in July. And in France, I believe in September, and then the English version will probably be out in the fall.
Okay, great.
So that was a great opportunity.
Topic for the book or your section?
It's called The Great Human Potential, and Martine has kind of woven it together with her perceptions and her stories, and it's a lot of big picture information. I know, at least for my part, from the P's. It's a little bit about galactic history and really what's been going on and where we're headed and the potential that we have and that's available to us if we decide to access it.
Great. So will that be on your website when it comes out?
When I have more details, I'll have that on my website.
Fantastic. And just to kind of give everyone listening or watching a context, Wendy, you do private sessions. You do group sessions fairly regularly in Santa Monica where people can come and ask questions of the Ps, and you also record those and have them available as archives on your website. And then you go around the world and do seminars, and you... am I missing anything?
I think that's enough. Yeah, it's on my website I have over 80 different events that have been recorded, over 160 hours of channel material from the P's, and gosh, that's just since I started putting it up on the website. And there's lots of free stuff on there as well. The website, by the way, is higherfrequencies.net. And so people can find more information on there.
And you also do quotes on a Facebook page, which is that Higher Frequencies too?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Well, we thought that maybe I could have a little chat with the P's. If that's okay with you. I have no idea
Sure.
what we're going to say, but I'm assuming will they say something at the beginning, or do they just go straight to questions?
Well, we'll see. We'll see what they want to do.
Okay.
Yeah, they'll either start spewing out something or they're asking for your question. I'm never really sure until I get out of the way. But I know they'd be happy to have a chat. So
Okay.
just a reminder that if you're watching the video, that they are depositing information at a vibrational level, and they always recommend plenty of water after you've listened to that, because it is moving things in the energetic field, which translates to change at the physical level. So
Great. Okay. Thank you.
So it'll take me just a minute to
Sure.
center.
Sure.
Yes, hello, dears. This is the Ninth Dimensional Pleiadian Collective, and it is a pleasure and an honor to have the opportunity to connect. So we're very excited to have the ability to view your perspective at this time, as we are able to connect with humanity and look at your records, because you are sharing a tremendous amount of information about consciousness from the level of compassion. How you struggle with finding it for yourselves first and foremost. And that is what you are working on the coming year and a half, is really finding compassion and reconnecting with yourselves and loving and appreciating yourselves. Because if you are failing to do that, it is going to be very difficult for you to create any sort of external reflection or external change, because change starts first within and then gets reflected externally into your reality. So you always have to start working on self first. And we want to applaud those of you who've been doing so for quite some time, and those of you who are just coming into awareness, and know that you have a tremendous amount of support on this side. Many beings who are your personal cheerleading squad, as it were, your personal advisors. And whether you're conscious of the fact that you are receiving information from them or not, rest assured that they are getting their ideas and information across to you at the subconscious level. So that's just the bit that we wanted to share here at the beginning, but we would be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have, Mr. Harris.
Hello. I'm curious. There are so many people in the last weeks and months who have been going through fear and or despair, somewhere along that scale. Sometimes catalyzed by what they're seeing in the world and how everything is changing and shifting, and all the shit, for want of a better word, is coming up. And sometimes because people question what's the future for humanity, because if there is all of this darkness and all of this destruction, how can it possibly be that things can transform, which are messages that we often receive. So I'm curious, what's your perspective on what I've just said, and also how people might be able to reconnect with light in themselves when they are experiencing any of those despair or fear thoughts or feelings?
Well, there are two things that we would say. One of the reasons why you are seeing so much quote unquote darkness is because you are also accessing so much light. You live in a dimension, and frankly a universe, of duality, so that for every action, there is a reaction. All right. For every piece of light, you have an equal amount of dark. And as you expand and have more light, everything that is dark and hidden will start to also come to the surface, so that it can also be integrated. This was a game of descension and reascension. So what that means is that you didn't start down at the bottom and working your way up. You are a being of divine light. You are part of source energy, and you are accessing that divine source piece of yourself at all times. You are that
And then you fractured off to go and play in other arenas. And in this one, you thought, wouldn't it be fun to see if we could go down into density, forget who we are, and see if we could come back up out of it? And that's what you're in the midst of. So when you ask us what lies ahead, we would simply say, what do you want? What kind of world do you want for yourself? Many of you get tied into the idea or the notion that you are damned to have an experience because that's what the collective wants, that somehow you are victimized because the collective is not wanting to be in a particular place. But what you fail to see or remember is that you are on a particular now moment in which that collective is holding a particular vibration by your own choosing. If you didn't wish to have that experience, you wouldn't be on that now moment. Simply put, you are choosing to be there. Now, whether it is for you to have that experience so that you can integrate that darkness within yourself, or that you've already integrated that peace and are holding light for those who have yet to discover that they are that light themselves. But it serves you and everyone else for you to be on that timeline. It is the ego that fails to see it. And having that awareness will also help you to release some of this, well, frankly say suffering that you're experiencing because you feel that things are headed in a negative direction. It is important that you embody that frequency that you would like to see outside of yourself in the world. So if you want to experience peace and joy and support and love and connection, as a community, as a planet, you have to create that first for yourself. So are you creating joy for yourself? Are you creating peace, connection, love? Are you loving yourself? That's a big one. Most of you, the answer is no. That inner critic is busy all the time. And what goes on collectively is just showing you where the majority of you are vibrationally. So if you are coming across something in the news or you're hearing a story and you're finding yourself activated and triggered by it, use it. Because if it is in your awareness, there is something for you to gain. There is some attraction that has created that as your reality. Simply put, you are running that vibration in your own personal life. So if you find that you are looking at what you will consider to be a conspiracy, or that you feel that the government is being manipulative, where are you experiencing those frequencies in your personal life? Where are you being manipulative? Perhaps it's something that seems rather innocuous to you, such as wanting a friend to come along to an event, even though they're not keen on it. You keep trying to cajole them and get them to go because you're afraid of doing it alone. Same vibration, just played out in a slightly different way and at a different scale. And once you start to address those frequencies in your own personal life, you will find that your perception of the collective changes. You will observe some of the things that are going on that may not have the highest vibration to them as being perhaps not a frequency that you would like to keep repeating it at the personal level, but you won't have the charge any longer. You will observe it and honor it as a creation for all of those beings who are deciding to play out a frequency. You will hold no judgment against it. You'll simply perceive it as a valid vibrational selection by others, but you yourself do not have to continue putting that out there. And as soon as enough of you decide that's not the frequency that you want to run, but you're not judging it as it's being played out by others, what you will start to do is pull up others or bring into their awareness that there is another option. And this is how change happens. It doesn't take a majority of you in order to create change. It takes a rather small number, but that change has to start within first and foremost. So that's our long-winded answer.
We like long-winded answers. We probably have room for one more question, unfortunately, because of our linear time constraints. Kind of on the same track, but there has been much prophecy around this being a golden age. And in terms of human opening and human empowerment, I can see the evidence of that's occurring. But there is a great deal of argument among people about it, understandably, because of the amount of things that haven't yet transformed or shifted. So I guess my question is a little less here around vibrations and emotions as the change, and a little more around the changes in action on our planet, which have been encouraged for a couple of years within many spiritual messages, that we shift to action now from intuition and intention. We take all of those things with us. Is there a sense or a knowing via you guys about how that's going to play out in the next few years? How much transformational action are we about to kind of see and walk through as a planet? Again, I know we have to decide, but I also know there is a timeline and to some degree, some level of destiny playing out here.
Well, what you're playing with right now is how you take action. And it's not in a traditional way, meaning the action is not from a lower vibrational masculine stance, but rather the divine masculine energy, which is very different, and it feels very foreign to you all in how you operate, because it's a bit like following breadcrumbs in how you achieve something, as opposed to, all right, here's the standard mode of operation. We follow steps A, B, C, and D in order to experience E. And that is going to be the biggest leap of faith for you all, and that will also determine the timeline. Many of you are getting very frustrated. You're feeling yourselves reaching a point of action, and some of that is being stimulated because anger is being activated and triggered, and the anger you've been suppressing, and really anger is nothing more than you being upset with yourself for somehow suppressing your divine light. You're never really angry with anyone outside of yourself. It's always self-directed, and it involves that suppression. So part of you are finding, all right, I'm frankly a little bored with the game and the way it's being played, so let's try something new. Let's try running more divine light. And so that gets activated. That's the base energy of physicality, and so that can get you to move. And then sometimes you don't move unless you feel really uncomfortable. If things are happy and even, most of you feel unmotivated to make change. So now you're turning that up and allowing yourself to feel more of what has been suppressed. We would say you're going to see things probably within 2 to 3 years, some big shifts in energy and technology. And that is going to have a big impact on what you all do, because what we would say to you is, what happens when energy's free? And what happens when you don't have to worry about a job? That means you have to really step in your divine power. That means you have to be responsible for absolutely every piece of your creation. And if you are not willing to be responsible, you're not wanting to be responsible, that's when you create these scenarios collectively that you're being manipulated. You literally hand over your power to somebody who's willing to play that role, and then say, oh, well, you know, they've manipulated me. They've pushed me in a certain direction. But as soon as you take responsibility for every piece of your creation, that cannot happen. You are not a victim. So that's in part why you're seeing so much quote unquote conspiracy and manipulation, because not all of you are ready to take on that full responsibility. And when you do, that is an absolute game changer. And energy itself, as it is reflected outside of you, and in this way we're talking about energy for fuels on your planet, the external representation of energy. As you start to run more internal energy, and you do that by taking responsibility, you connect more with divine source energy, you see that reflection in your external technology. And that's a game changer. That really is. And that will be the major piece for you all. You will find quote unquote new energy sources or new ways of working with energy, and that's because you're connecting more with the energy within, the divine within. So I'm not sure we answered that for you, but probably 2 to 3 years.
Perfect.
You'll see more action, and you'll start taking it. People will start taking it in small ways in their personal life. before they start stepping out and saying, this is what I want, because how you address it is going to determine the energy that goes in underneath it and the results that you get. So if you go into something angry, what you will get is more anger and defense. All right. If you deal with your own stuff first and then say, all right, in my life, I would like more joy and more connection, and this is what I want here and there, you can start engaging with the world at that level and in that way, and start creating new projects that support that, as opposed to feeling like you have to break down something else. What you're literally doing is taking away the energetic vibrational support that goes to the illusion, and you're putting that energy into something else, which will be built up then. So even if you're not attacking something to break it down, the removal of that energy automatically does that without you having to take that quote unquote negative action. You're putting the energy into something that you would like to see and that is positively created. And that feels very uncomfortable for many of you because of the old conditioning, the way you think you have to work with the lower masculine energy. You've got to be out there and break it down. No, you work vibrationally and pull it out and put it into something else that you want to support and build up.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And it's been a pleasure to have this time with you. So thank you.
It's our pleasure.
Hello, Miss Kennedy.
Hello.
So, Wendy, thanks for that, and thanks for the conversation. I'm sure it will be interesting to some people listening. And you and I, are doing a seminar together in LA in June, which is called The Expanded Self. And
I'm really excited about.
Yeah, me too. And it's kind of, one of the things, as friends, one of the things Wendy and I do is share our journeys together. And, we help each other out with the things that we're experiencing as sensitive people and just human people in this time. So The Expanded Self is a workshop where we felt some of the things that we've learned over the years, sometimes the hard way, we're going to bring those to this day and have a combination of some talks and some questions and answers and some channels, but also quite a few exercises throughout the day that will be not strenuous but physical based. So we'll be doing things with our bodies, moving around the room in relation to each other, things like that will help people with sensitivity issues, boundary issues. Yeah. Anything you want to add, Wendy?
I think you pretty much summed it up.
Yeah.
But I do think a lot of it is what we've learned over the years. And some things what I found is a lot of it seems really obvious when you talk about it, but we don't stop to really think about reading frequencies in a particular way. And it's once we put that spotlight on it, we can start to identify it and shift it and say, oh, wait, now I recognize that I'm connected and perhaps not at a vibrational level that I want to experience that connection. And I can move up to another level and things like that, just in a really practical way. And I'm excited about that because I think a lot of people have been struggling with their sensitivity and not knowing quite how to deal with it.
Yeah, and it's also really enjoyable to be with a smaller group. So obviously, we do a lot of online work, which is, a larger number, but there's something quite special about being in a room with people for a day. Whether it's 10 of you or 30 of you or 40 of you, it doesn't matter. It's kind of, there is something cohesive. So that will be a full day with us. And I've completely spaced on the date. Is it June the 22nd or something around there?
The 20th.
20th. Okay. So
it's a Saturday, yes.
Yeah, Saturday the 20th, and we'll put links to the booking, but that would be found through your website, which again is higherfrequencies.net. Right. And my website, which is leeharrisenergy.com, and our events pages are where you will find that. So, Wendy, thanks so much. Lovely to talk to you. Here's to more in the future.
Thank you.
Yeah, and see you soon.
And we will come to know this in the golden age. We'll rediscover who we were. You'll feel the